I have 4 documents left from my father's life. I know he came from Dinov, Poland, which is where my mother came from, and some cousins, and her brother, who eventually took care of me. I don't know where he went. I don't know how he ever got to Oriente Province. I didn't know I was born in Santiago or in Guantanamo. My whole life is a mystery, and my mother died when I was quite young as well. So all the unanswered questions remained unanswered. For many years, since people have been going to Cuba, in fact, I'm one of the last of my friends to go to Cuba. People I know have been visiting, but I could never find a group that went east, that was going to Santiago and Guantanamo. And when I read in a magazine that the JCC of San Francisco was going to Guantanamo and Santiago, I called Ariel immediately.
And she said that she was born in Cuba, and she's very interested in this specific trip because she thinks she was born in Guantanamo. Wow, red flag. And then she said, and my father is buried there. So I said, wow, that's an interesting story. No problem, I will find your father. I know the Jewish cemetery, and it's not going to be a problem.
There were really no obstacles for me personally when I got down there. Ariel found a lot of obstacles, or several obstacles.
They looked for him, and the answer was, there is nothing about this man. William Zuckerman is not buried in the Jewish cemetery in eastern part of the island, El Cristo. And at the same time, Rodolfo Mizrahi, the president of the Jewish community in Guantanamo, sent me papers that William Zuckerman is one of the founders of the Jewish community in the end of the 1920s. And he sent me the documents with a signature that says William Zuckerman. William Zuckerman is a founder of the Jewish community, and he's not buried in the Jewish cemetery? Something wrong here.
Guantanamo was towards the beginning of the trip. I think we arrived in Santiago de Cuba on Friday, and we went to Guantanamo on the Sunday. So this whole story came out on the bus ride from Santiago de Cuba to Guantanamo, which is about an hour, maybe a little bit more.
There was no trace of Cuba in my childhood and growing up, none whatsoever. I grew up as I think a typical Brooklyn girl, and went to Thomas Jefferson High School and Brooklyn College. And when I went to Guantanamo, I met all these people at the congregation.
I didn't know a lot about the Jewish community in Guantanamo. I know that the American soldiers before the Cuban Revolution used to go for the services, for Passover, for Rosh Hashanah, and then kind of disappear, and there was like a rebirth in the 90s. Today, the Jewish community in Guantanamo has around 80 members, and the community functions in the second floor of the house of the President, Rodolfo Mizrahi. And most of the members belong to one clan, one family, that is the Mizrahi family.
My expectations originally, when I hooked up with Ariel, were to take some time off when the group visited Guantanamo and see what I could find out alone on my own. I had no idea that the congregation existed. I had no idea that they could possibly really locate the grave site. My expectations were much more limited. If there was a town hall, maybe fill out a paper for my birth certificate. And I know he called people in Jerusalem, I know he called people in Puerto Rico, and I know he was in touch with Rudolfo in Guantanamo and the congregation in Santiago, trying to piece together this story. Where was this grave site? It wasn't moved to the Jewish cemetery.
And she sent me a document with the exact location where her father is buried. Cementerio Municipal de Guantanamo, the municipal cemetery. This is not the Jewish cemetery. So I requested to Rodolfo Mizrahi to go there and check and see where is the grave of William Zuckerman. The Guantanamo community went to the cemetery. They started to investigate. They were exactly to the place that the paper indicated. And they called me back and they told me that there is nothing there. And I remember it was a little bit late at night, and I went to sleep with this idea that we cannot find a gravestone. Like, it's impossible. We have the paper, we have the exact location, and there is nothing there. And then we found him. I cannot explain to you, because that was days and days with documents and trying to figure out why, where.
They decided to bury my father in the municipal cemetery, probably because of all the difficulty of moving the body to the Jewish cemetery. It would have been probably horse and wagon involved and take hours and hours, possibly days, and it was just a very complicated thing at the time.
We found the grave 40 inches below the level, the surface that is supposed to be. The reason for that is because there were earthquakes there, landslides, and also a lot of rain that was covering, and nobody took care of that for 80 years.
So it was just neglected and covered over year after year after year. And so even though they had the deed, there was nothing there until finally they were able to locate it. I met the 4 gentlemen who excavated it, and the Jewish community in Guantanamo fixed what was broken. It was broken marble all around it, and they replaced it with tile. And in a very moving way, there were the stones of the people who had visited it when it was uncovered. It was an enormous mystery, but he was a sleuth. Ariel is a sleuth.
Bueno, todos. Jigadal, Bejikadas, Shemer Rabá. Amén. Real Madral, Binjute, Galvin Banjute, Bellama, Polcanet, Bicaret, Misihet, Bellallejón, Ubeovejón, Ubardejor, Beg Israel, Bagalá, Umizban, Karim, Benru. Amén. Yehe Shemen, Rabá, Manuela, Amay, Jikabal, Bejipaal, Bejitoman, Bejinaser, Bejitadal, Bejitadel,
When I visited this uncovered grave of my father's, there was a lot of emotion in the group. My daughter was with me, and she became very emotional. And I met those 4 gentlemen who had uncovered it, and they were all dressed and just lovely men, and we shook hands, and it was very, very moving for me to meet them. And great happiness when they uncovered it after being buried under all this debris.
It was remarkable. I mean, as we were sitting around the stone, which had been refurbished, because it had been there for so long, around the gravestone were, many members of the Guantanamo community, of the Guantanamo Jewish community, but also many members of the non-Jewish community, including the 4 gentlemen who had actually, spent time digging and finding the original stone and helping to set it, back to its, former glory. And they were, very proud. They were as proud as we all were, and as emotional as we all were about it. So there was a very strong feeling of community in Guantanamo, Jewish, non-Jewish. It didn't really make any difference. We were all one. It was a very, poignant moment again.
For the community, it was very important to have a new member. And the new member is Sylvia Weiner, who was born in Guantanamo, and they gave us the honor to set the mezuzahs also. And one of them was done by Sylvia. So imagine a person that was born there is coming 80 years later and has the chance to put the mezuzah in the community.
The kindness of this Jewish community in Guantanamo, and as I said, all different hues and having no relationship to folks like me, what they did for me and what they are still doing. When I heard that they had said Kaddish the day the grave was uncovered, just so incredibly moving and so kind. For me, that's one of the very important moments, and finding out that I am actually a Guantanamera.